prepped. Okay.
There we go.
Good morning or good afternoon to that's joining right now. We have a few minutes before we actually start the webinar, but we're just waiting for a few more attendees. Like always, we're trying to be patient with them and considerate. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll give those remaining individuals who register a few more minutes to join, and we'll get started here shortly. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, we'll just give maybe a minute or so here left. We have a few people that are still logging on, so thank you for your patience. I can tell you it'll be worth the wait. No pressure on Craig, who's going to help us with the presentation this morning. All right, folks, we'll go ahead and get started with this morning's webinar. Thank you again for joining us. Like I said, we have a great presentation this morning. We're going to be focusing on our compliance blade. It's a great product. If you haven't used it, the fact that you're here with us today, hopefully will be an eye-opener. And I can tell you from experience, it's a solution that I wish when I was on the end user side of the I would have had, and I would have been able to make good use of this product. So we're going to go over some of the ins and outs of what the compliance blade is, how you can make good use of this solution within your environment. And what you're going to see is that it's very self-intuitive. I mean, it's not that complicated to actually use and implement in one's environment, but the value that you get by configuring it and complementing the rest of the Checkpoint product suite solutions, it's just too many to mention. But we're going to be highlighting that over the course of this webinar, some of those key points and how you can find great value in it. As a reminder, we have a group of panelists with us from architects, principals, lead, ATAM engineers. We also have some of our management team members on that panel. You're able to ask questions also in Spanish if that's your native tongue. We have individuals in the panel that will be able to answer those questions in Spanish as well. If some of your questions are not answered for any reason, please, we encourage you to either email us at atam@checkpoint.com. If you have any questions regarding the ATAM service and how you can add this as part of your support contract, please let us know there as well. If you want information on what the ATAM service is and the services that you are eligible for, please let us know. We want to make sure that you understand that you're getting a lot of value by having this service as part of your support contract, regardless if it's through Checkpoint or through one of our valued partners. You can definitely add the advanced TAM support service to one of those contracts. And we also want to remind you that one of our participants today is going to win a free 1-year compliance blade license. So please stick around so you can get more information at the end of this presentation on how you may be eligible to win a free 1-year compliance blade license. So we're excited for that as well. I think that, again, once you start playing with this technology, because of what's going on in our industry, in cybersecurity, all the vulnerabilities, all the different things that have occurred in recent weeks, too many to get into detail now. I think that once you see the compliance blade, you're going to find some significant value, and it may pique your interest. If you're an ATAM customer, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to your ATAM engineer, so he or she can give you more information on how you can actually leverage this, maybe even do a POC. So go ahead and make good use of that relationship that you already have with your ATAM engineer. So thank you so much again for joining us. Without further delay, I'll go ahead and turn it over now to Mr. Craig Watkins. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Carlos. Yeah, I appreciate you all taking the time today. We're going to talk about the compliance blade, and my apologies up front for saying y'all. I'm from the Ozarks and Southern Missouri, so just expect that throughout the presentation. So we'll go ahead and get diving into this. And first of all, on the compliance blade, I think this is it's an underrated blade in my opinion in the Checkpoint suite. There's a lot of good stuff that you can do. And like Carlos said, it's really easy to use. So today we're going to talk about, why we use the compliance blade. And then I'm going to go into a little bit of a demo. One of the things that I love about this is that it's very customizable. I mean, you've got a lot of pre-checks and canned checks that are provided by Checkpoint when it comes to compliance, but the power in this is the ability to customize and write your own compliance findings if needed, or checks. So we'll go into the demo and look at those custom compliance checks, and we'll also talk about some of the compliance reporting aspects that are in Smart Event and built into the compliance blade. We'll touch on licensing, and then I'll also provide you a few resources if you're interested in educating yourself further on the compliance blade. So why use the compliance blade? Basically, this is there to make sure that you're getting the most out of your firewall security stack, right? So what this is, it's basically a helping hand. It makes you look good as a security admin because sometimes you think that you're setting up this great firewall infrastructure, security infrastructure, and it looks good to you and everything. But in reality, you're human. You may have missed something, and so the reality of it is that there's going to be things that you forget about or miss when it comes to security, and when it comes to misses in security, that can be absolutely detrimental. So like I said, the compliance blade is there as a helping hand to find some of those things and make sure you get the most out of your security stack. It offers practical recommendations to improve your security posture. And not only does it look at firewall rules, it looks at all of the blades. It looks at your threat prevention, DLP, content awareness, URL filtering, IPsec VPN. It looks at the plethora of everything that's going on inside of your Checkpoint environment. So it's very, very in depth. It looks at a lot of things, and it'll direct you to areas of concerns that you may not have known about. Another thing that's great about this is that it reduces the amount of man hours when it comes to reporting and if your CISO or auditor comes to you there and they say, hey, we need to be ISO 27001 compliant. What can you tell me about our firewall stack or our firewall infrastructure? Is it compliant? As a tech guy, I'm not an attorney. I don't want to pour through pages and pages of regulatory requirements and try to match them up to what's going on with the firewall. Checkpoint's already done that legwork. So with the click of a button in the compliance blade, you can generate an ISO 27001 report, hand it to your auditor, your CISO, and it's right there in minutes. So all of that work's done on the back end. No, and you don't have to worry about it. Another thing about the compliance blade is that, in Checkpoint regards, that it's a very mature product. Checkpoint was ahead of the game with some of the other competitors. So yeah, that's a good thing. I think some of the competitors are still playing catch up when it comes to these compliance check, but the Checkpoint solution is very comprehensive. Quick look at some of these findings that could potentially pop up on a security audit. 27% of corporations, they have any except rules, which we all know that's bad. 75% of corporations had not implemented anti-spoofing. 77% of corporations had not fully documented their firewall rules. That's bad, because when an auditor comes in and starts looking at your rule base and you've got things that are uncommented, you're going to get a hit on that, and because you don't have a way to associate a help ticket or a change control with that. So that's a big deal. And then, of course, over 80% of corporations, they've got unused or expired rules. I mean, people just don't go through that cleanup procedure over time, and the Checkpoint compliance blade will call those out, and like I said, give you a helping hand to get those cleaned up. So yeah, increased security scores, eliminating the poor configurations, the any except rules, the anti-spoofing, like I talked about. There's 300 plus predefined Checkpoint security best practices built into the product already. That does not include all of the customization that you can do yourself to match your environment. Then the other wonderful thing about this is that it monitors the changes in real time. So if you decide to make a change and it's not compliant with your company's security policy, for example, in your rule base, and you publish that, it's going to call it out and send a log and alert you as soon as you do that publish that you're against compliance. Detect human errors. This is a big one, I think. Misconfiguration of Gaia OS parameters. If somebody miskeys in a primary DNS server, a radius server, or NTP, that's probably a good example. And if you don't have good synchronization in your time, I mean, just because you miskeyed an NTP address, that's absolutely detrimental to your security posture. If you have to go back and look at forensic logs or anything like that. So that's one thing that the compliance blade helps you out with is the Gaia OS checks and make sure that your configuration standards are in place. And as a matter of fact, this is something that I'm actually working on with a customer as an ATAM. They have a third party that supports their gateways infrastructure. There's a lot of hands in the kitchen. The people at the third party, they come and go. So a lot of changes can get made in a large environment like that, and mistakes happen. So this is a way to protect from those mistakes. And what I've been doing for this customer is writing some of those customized OS settings, like are they using a standard NTP server that matches the customer's standard and that kind of thing. One other thing as far as this goes with that customer, the same one that I'm working with, I've taken it a step further and look at health check items. Look and see if there's core dump files that exist. Has their CLISH configuration not been saved? Is the disk space getting too low? Are all of their jumbos on the same standard? When you have a large environment, you might have a couple of gateways hanging around out there that aren't on your standard jumbo. So those are some of the other compliance checks that I've done for customers as far as customization goes. And like I said, it's just a very powerful tool in that regard. Regulatory compliance. This is, most companies, most large companies, they've got to adhere to certain regulatory requirements like PCI, HIPAA, COBIT, GDPR, ISO 27001, you name it, they probably have to comply. So there's 39 of these built in R8040, but that doesn't limit you. Once again, the customization ability of the compliance blade lets you build some of these compliance regulations, and import them in through an XML format to match your business and your environment. And then here's just a list of some of the regulatory standards that are built in to the compliance blade. And we have, as an ATAM organization, we help customer implement these and make sure that they're lined up with best practices on the regulatory frameworks. R81, today I'm demoing in R8040. R81, the overall look and feel of the compliance blade hasn't really changed much, but they have added some additional best practice checks into the compliance blade. But what you see today will look very similar to what you'll see in R81. So to enable the compliance blade is super easy, right? So it's a management server blade. You go in here, you check compliance, and then it goes hand in hand with Smart Event. And to get those, those rich reports, you want to make sure that you've got Smart Event enabled to take advantage of those. When you enable the compliance blade and publish, that first scan, this is all going to depend on the size of your environment. It could take a few minutes if you just have a handful of gateways, or it could take up to half an hour, going through everything. So, that scan takes place immediately as soon as you publish and enable the compliance blade. And then after that, it'll scan every 24 hours going forward for any findings or changes that have happened. So now I'm going to go into the lab section, the kind of the demo section of this, and we'll go over the overview page here. So to get to the compliance blade, you click on Logs and Monitor, and then open a new tab, hit the plus sign. And I've already got the compliance widget here on my home screen in my favorites, but if it's not up there already, on the left-hand side, you can go to Views and put that in your favorites, right? So this is the overview screen, very user-friendly. Up here in the top left, you can see your secure, good, medium, poor findings, and those are all based on a 0 to 100 range. So obviously, if it's 0, you're completely not compliant. If it's 100, you're 100% secure. And then there's also in between things, you're partially compliant. So, like I was talking about the NTP server, there's a lot of Boolean situations where you're either not compliant, it's a 0, or it's a 100. So if in those types of situations, if you've got the wrong NTP server in, you're going to be completely non-compliant. So if I click on, I'll click on the poor findings here. So as you can see, these are all of the poor findings on the gateway that I have set up in my lab environment. And you can see some of these here associated with the different blades, like, make sure that the access policy is blocking high risk applications, make sure each rule has a comment defined. And then there's some custom ones that I did a little bit farther down. Go back to the main overview screen here. So if I go to see all, this will show me all of those pre-built-in 300 plus compliance checks. You'll see some of them, they've got an NA by them. Those probably the gateway either doesn't support that finding or it doesn't have that particular blade enabled. But you can see they're all in this screen. And if I do a search on VPN, This is going to show me all of my VPN related compliance checks. The search feature is very rich, and it comes up very quickly. Then over here, if there's my new firewall and Gaia OS best practices, I'll come back to those later. That's where you can set up those custom compliance checks for your environment. Right here in the middle, these are your gateways. I only have one gateway set up in my lab right now, but if you've got 50 or 60 gateways, they're going to show up in this list right here, and you can click on those, and those are interactive, and we'll show you each all of the compliance findings for that particular gateway. Then in the back to the overview screen, if I go to the top right here under blades, if you want to look at URL filtering specific findings, click on that, and it'll show you anything related to URL filtering that's either compliant or not compliant in your environment. Down at the bottom right here, we've got our regulatory compliance. So there's 6 here on the main screen. These are customizable. You can choose which 6 that you want to have on here. You can actually click on see all, and it goes ahead and scans for all of the regulatory frameworks, not just the ones that you need. So if there's something that you suddenly have to comply with, you don't have to go and rescan. It's already there in the compliance blade. And like I said, you can click on that gear icon and choose which one you want to show on that main favorites screen right there. So if I click on ISO 27002, this will show all of the associated findings that Checkpoint has determined are associated with ISO 27002 standards that the firewall infrastructure has to adhere to. So I'm actually going to jump out and go to Manage and Settings and show you under Blades, and then Compliance, and then Settings. This will take a moment to come up. So this is where you'll see there's your regulatory frameworks. Actions is where you can import your own custom frameworks to match your environments, and then there's your rescan option if you want to do a manual rescan. This is also where you can check the boxes to send the compliance data to Smart Event, and also email notifications for any kind of compliance security alerts. So you can activate those and get email alerts real time anytime there's something that goes out of compliance or somebody's made a change. So we'll go back into logs and monitor. Then on the bottom left here is our security alerts and system messages. This is where you can actually see the audit logs of if somebody went through and made a non-compliant firewall rule or a non-compliant Gaia OS change. It's going to log it right here, put the date and timestamp, and associate the ID with the appropriate compliance check, and also tell you what blade it's associated with. Okay. So now I'm gonna demonstrate some of the custom best practice checks that I was talking about earlier. So if I go back up here on the top left to see all and look at all of the compliance checks, and then go up to new, I'm going to do a firewall best practice. For demonstration, what I'm going to do is basically I want to, and this is purely for demonstration purposes. If my policy in my company says that, hey, we don't want to have any kind of telnet rules that are allowed or have accept in the rule, I'm going to build that policy check, the compliance check. So we'll give it a name here. and a description of what it is. Say, hey, this is our policy that states we do not allow telnet except rules. And then the action item is basically just what you do to remediate that. So down here under the actual rule definition, I select my service, do a search for telnet, and add that in there, and I select accept. Now this is what I don't want it to find. If this is present in my rule base, I want it to flag it as a out of compliance check. So if it's in poor status down here, I want to also check to see which rules match that. So I'm going to come back to that here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and create my Gaia OS best practice also. And what I'm going to do here is it's going to be a simple check to see if syslog is to my standard IP address, right? So we'll give it a name and a description. Verify that my syslog server is set to the company's standard IP address, and then an action item to, basically correct it if it's found. So this is where it gets really rich and powerful as far as these best practice definitions are script driven. So this is where you can take things right out of Clish or in the OS and write a small 2 or 3 line script and put it in here. And this is basically what I was doing for that other customer. And I'll kind of show you what I've done here. So I've got a test gateway here, and what these all are when I do this listing is these are all just little 1, 2, 3 line scripts that I've written to check some of these things that are specific to that customer environment. So as you can see, I've got NTP server checks. I've got to, are they using NetFlow? What IP address is the NetFlow server? Do they have enough space for snapshots? Are they using SNMP v3? Those kind of things. So that's just kind of an example of what I've done. There's plenty more that you can do. And for the sake of this this demo, we'll look at the syslog one. Like I said, this is a simple script. It's 1 line. It's looking at the config/active file, which is where the majority of your Clish settings are. And I use this gateway, my lab gateway, to test the script out, make sure it has the right output. And then, if it looks okay, then I put it in the compliance blade check. So yeah, I run it. As you can see, my standard is 192, 168, 193, 12. That's what should be expected in my environment, right? So just, yeah, basically paste that expected output of that IP address of what the standard should be, and then paste that script in there after you've tested it. And I'm actually going to cancel out of this because I've already created one of these previously. So if I do a syslog check there, it shows we're secure right now. We're compliant because I've got the correct IP address. Same thing with my telnet access rule that I set up earlier. So I've done a rescan and it's finished. You know, for the sake of this demo, I've fast forwarded a little bit. So go back into logs and monitor. I've actually jumped around a little bit, apologies. Sorry about this. Okay, I apparently hit the slide too quick. So right here, I'm going to show you that I'm going to sign on to my gateway and make that change. I'm going to make that syslog setting non-compliant. So we'll go over to system logging, and then there's my standard IP address. And this is to simulate, you know, a technician going in here and miskeying. You know, they put in 22 on accident, which is not our standard. And then the other check for the telnet allow rule, I'm going to build that rule here. And the purpose of this is to actually demonstrate, you know, what happens whenever, you know, you build these rules and something, I'll show you that it goes out of compliance immediately. So just building a generic telnet allow accept rule here, regardless of the source or destination addresses. What it's looking for is that service and that accept in the compliance check. Go back into the settings, and for the sake of it rescans when you publish, I'm going to go ahead and run another rescan just for the sake of the demo here. And there's where it finished. So if I do a search on Telnet, that finding that I built earlier is the, you know, the custom one that says check to see if the Telnet allow rule is present. And right now you can see that it's set, it's poor because I've actually added that rule and it's called it out. And then down at the bottom, it'll actually tell you which rule number it is, and you can double click on that and it'll show you the exact rule. I'll do a search on my syslog custom compliance check that I did earlier. And as you can see also, it's poor. because I set that to that incorrect IP address. One other thing that you can do is set a follow-up. So for example, if you've got an audit meeting coming up on the 28th, and you've got to have this finding remediated by then, you can set this follow-up right here. And then that will be on your action items on your home screen as an item to follow up on by that date. And it'll actually be under that upcoming items section there. So I'm going to come back to the regulatory frameworks here and click on this ISO 27002 just to show you how easy it is to generate that report on the fly. So there's all of your findings associated with that regulatory framework. And if I go up here to generate report up at the top, this will take a few moments. But yeah, this is where your CISO or an auditor walks into your office and says, hey, I need a report really quick. How are we doing on ISO 27001 compliance? And then you come in here, click generate report while they're standing there, and you'll be able to email this or print it off and hand it to them. Give it a few more moments here. So yeah, here's the first page of the report, a very good graphical format for management, CISOs, a good overview, pretty much what you would see on the overview screen of your compliance blade. And then it goes deeper into the details of which compliance findings are good, partially compliant, or non-compliant. And if we go down a little bit further, it'll show you the findings associated with blades like firewall, application control, IPsec VPN, IPS, and Gaia, the OS parameters. Okay. So now we get into the smart event reporting. If I open up a new tab and go to reports, this is where you can actually generate a compliance blade report. The nice thing about this is that you can schedule it. And in this example, if I want to schedule it every day, if we've got that many changes going on and I want to have a daily report, just set it up here for every 24 hour to look at the last 24 hours. And then you can set it up to send an email report to, one or multiple individuals on a scheduled basis. And if I go under task and scheduled, you can actually see where I've set up that recurrence of every day. And this is an actual copy of that PDF report that gets generated. Once again, very good graphical format overview. It goes over your regulatory findings. Once again, very detailed, just like that ISO 27001 report. Something, once again, that you can hand off to management or your CISO quickly. All right, so licensing, I'm not going to go too into this, but it's based on Smart One, Open Server, multi-domain, and the number of gateways. And typically those are in five gateway increments. And you can also do a subscription based or a yearly based, that kind of thing. But I'm not a compliant or a licensing expert, so please talk to your account team about licensing for this. And if you'd like to do a demo, they can arrange that also. One other thing I wanted to touch on is Checkpoint Pro. If you do have the compliance blade enabled, it'll send compliance checks up to Checkpoint Pro. And if you're not familiar with what Pro is, it's basically a managed service from Checkpoint where Checkpoint actively monitors your resources, CPU, memory, hardware, those types of things, jumbos, and those are all reported up to Checkpoint and proactively monitored, and tickets can be generated, SRs can be generated on some of those items also. Once again, if Checkpoint Pro, if that's something you're interested in, contact your account team. That's a very good service if you've got several gateways out there that you and have a small security staff to where you just can't monitor those actively all the time. Real quick slide. There's a few other products out there that they're more complementary than competitive. But you can see what Checkpoint covers here. Comprehensive, not just the firewall, it covers all the blades. It's fully integrated into the management server, whereas these other products are third party. It finds issues real time. These other products, you may have to run manual analysis after the fact. And like I said earlier in the slideshow, if this is the compliance blade is your helper, and you can use it every day. A few resources I want to cover off on. The Checkmates toolbox. I'm sure you all are familiar with Checkmates community. You can actually find some compliance checks out here that have been customized for particular regulatory frameworks. The community can contribute here. So do a search on the Checkmates toolbox for the compliance, and you can find those those additional frameworks out there if you'd like. Other resources, of course, is Checkpoint ATAM. We can help out with this. Like I said, this is something that I'm actively helping out with a customer on custom checks, that kind of thing. I do want to note that there's a weekly compliance blade call every Thursday at 1 p.m. Central, and this is actually hosted by our technical sales team. So if you would like a link to that Zoom session to get a little more in depth with questions, email the atam@checkpoint.com and we can provide that to you. And there's also an ATRG technical resource guide dedicated to the compliance blade. It's SK 120256. So check that out. It's a really good SK. It's very comprehensive. And to summarize this, all in all, the compliance blade is easy to use. It's very customizable, very powerful. It can fix and detect your misconfigurations and really just give you good auditing reports and compliance framework, regulatory framework that you can hand off to your audit team or your CISO easily without having to do all the legwork and pouring through paperwork of regulatory compliance. So that's all I've got. I appreciate everybody's time today, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dan Wozniak.
Thanks, Greg. Great job. Thank you for sharing that with all of us. I wanted to thank everybody again for joining us. I hope you got useful information from this webinar. Just a reminder, we will have another webinar next month, so please keep an eye on that invite for next month in June. Also, remember that we are going to give away a 1-year license for the compliance blade. So keep an eye on your email for that as well. We will reach out to the winner here pretty soon, okay? Again, thanks everybody for joining, and hope you have a good day. Thank you.